I've interviewed, it's got to be hundreds and hundreds of people that were friends of Elvis, on stage with Elvis, family members, everybody. And people always ask me, who's your favorite interview? And I don't have one favorite except for Priscilla. But other than that, there's just a group of people that you just say, man, if I could just sit down with anybody and listen to him talk, it would be this guy. And last year in August, I interviewed him, and when he came off stage, and I think he might have said this on stage, I've been doing this for years, and I think I want to go out with something, and so this is going to be my last time to really get on stage. And well, then I wanted him to come here for this in Tupelo. I've never interviewed him here, and I thought we would all love him in Tupelo. And he's from Fulton, which is about 35 miles that way, and grew up there. So I said, can you do it one more time? And he said, anything for Elvis. So let's welcome here former mayor of Shelby County, a man who has his own parkway, Bill Morris. Mayor.
Good evening. It's great to be where the Aiken was buried.
That's
It
right.
created the spirit of the greatest entertainer in the world, Elvis Presley. You never heard that before.
I have not heard that. You've been working on that one. You saved that up. I'm so excited to have you here, and so honored that you broke your retirement to talk about Elvis, because you thought this was special, this town, special to you growing up as you grew up. And we have a picture here of your book that you've written called A Legendary Life, and you're going to be outside with copies of that book looking to speak to people. But I found, in looking through your book, I found that.
It's important to show that too. It's important. That was the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me. As a kid on the loose, not having a family, I was given a job at the Etowah County Times, and I have to tell you, it's important then, it's important now. And the editor of that newspaper is here today, Teresa Blake. I know she's here. Teresa, are you? There she is in the back. She came over to be here for this presentation. You don't get away from your roots, folks. I've been to Tupelo many times. Through Tupelo, hitchhiking into Tupelo, saving money to go to the Lyric Theater, save more if I can have a date. But it's still home. I was down in Merida, Mississippi 3 years ago. And the state of Mississippi formed their first ever Hall of Fame, Historic Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And Elvis was one of the recipients, and he couldn't go, and the family couldn't go, of course, but so I went to represent him. It was amazing to me to hear all the people getting their awards. The one thing that was universal, whether it be Morgan Freeman or whomever, the one thing they all said, they remembered their roots. They went away, and I said when I spoke for Elvis, there was no place in the world that Elvis would rather be than in Mississippi, where he grew up. And I believe that then, I believe it now. And we talked about it a lot of times. You just don't get over. You might have to leave. A lot of us did in World War II. We had to go to different places to get jobs, get money to live on. But you still want to come home. And so I'm delighted to be back here today. I've never had the opportunity to be here before for his festival. I appreciate being asked to be here.
Well, we are happy.
I'm proud you did it this year, because at my age, I won't remember a hell of a lot next year.
So, you have a birthday coming up, right?
Yeah.
Tell them how old you'll be.
90. Wow. 69 years ago, last week, Elvis graduated from high school, and my wife was in that class.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been dead now 6 years. Mm-hmm. But I'll use her as a gauge. When Elvis, just before he died, we met in the hallway of the theater. See a movie, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at night. It was dark, pretty much in there. We walked in, Elvis walked to the back. He greeted us. No words were spoken. It didn't need to be spoken. We could tell there was drama in this meeting. There was drama because we knew he was not well. And we hugged each other, as we had done on many occasions. But we hugged each other, and my wife said to him motherly, Elvis, you've got to take better care of yourself. And he said, I know. And with that, there were tears. Not sobbing, just tears. Because we all felt things bad were happening. And so I'll never will forget that time, because she was insightful. She's a nurse, she could tell he just wasn't doing well.
She knew him at that time of his life before it all happened, so she knew the real person behind whatever was that we were seeing. The name of your book is so perfect, A Legendary Life. You've kept such incredible records from the things that you've done in your life as an official. And one of your first jobs, one of the youngest sheriffs ever in the state of Tennessee, you were sheriff in Shelby County. And you were sheriff when this gentleman came to town that's on the right there smoking a cigar with an idea to build a children's hospital in your city of Memphis. And you're over there on the left at the end of the table. Just for a second, tell me about, we think of Elvis when we think of Memphis, but also there's a big part of Memphis that St. Jude could have been anywhere, and Danny brought it to Memphis.
I'll tell you, it's important that we talk about St. Jude because as a young JC, Charlie Watson and I talked last night about the Junior Chamber of Commerce. I have to tell you, it's an after party thing, a hoot. I may come back next year. I don't want to come and speak, but I want to go to the after party. That's great. What a great talent. Are you kidding me? But anyway, we were raising money through the JCs for the idea, the concept of building St. Jude. Who knew what they wanted to do? Danny didn't know, but he had a charge from his Monsignor that you need to build a facility for children so that catastrophic diseases can be addressed outside the norm for people who didn't have the money and the resources to get there. And so Danny says to him, where do you think I should locate this hospital? And he said, the Monsignor said, Memphis, Tennessee, because that is a place where there's great poverty, great need. It's the center of the universe of our churches. And so he selected Memphis. I was working as a volunteer the first day up. I was chairman of the first ever fundraiser for St. Jude, for Danny Thomas and his shower of stars. People who came in to sing and do all that. And so people in the music business have forever been the catalyst to make good things happen. And in this case with Danny Thomas, he called on Sammy Davis Jr. and Johnny Cash and a whole lot of other people who came in and participated and raised money. But I was the ticket sale chairman. And where you see there, I'm sitting with Danny Thomas, the architect, and the people who were responsible for getting this hospital built. I opened the envelopes. First bid for building the first structure was $1,250,000. This year, it will require $1,250,000,000 to operate that hospital. So it's massive, but there are over 21 satellites, St. Jude satellites around the world, millions of people, and this year there will be over 75,000 events that take place with volunteers, like all of you, having events, raising money, whatever doing, to make sure that no child dies before their time because they don't have access to care. And one nice thing, we all talk about who did what. Everybody knows the charity of Elvis Presley, right? What I didn't know until last year, we were talking about, we had an event at Graceland to raise money for St. Jude. And when we had the event, they brought out a stack of canceled checks, looked like this, that went back to the early 60s. Elvis Presley had written checks to St. Jude before it was St. Jude, before we knew what the mission was going to be, other than mission, before we had a medical director, before we had a patient, before we had the opportunity to see how fantastic it was going to be, life-saving for people. And it was for everybody around the world to come to St. Jude. Here, on one of the satellite operations, and Elvis Presley was a catalyst of something making that happen.
Yeah, and I talk about that he and Colonel got that FDR ship and auctioned it off and gave the proceeds to Danny Thomas, but it was really more than the money, it was the publicity, because anything Elvis did, news covered it.
Yeah.
So there's that famous picture of Elvis and Danny Thomas, and you see St. Jude's. I think it's under construction. It was before it was built, and that was what Elvis was doing to help Danny get the publicity to let it go.
I might add one post note to this. Today, as we sit here in Memphis, Tennessee, construction is underway on $1 billion worth of new construction for St. Jude expansion.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And guess what? They were going to pay for it the day it opens from people like you.
Yeah. And kids and families never pay a thing for treatment, for hotel, food, while you're there.
Exactly.
All donations.
Yeah.
One other story about your life. I feel like I'm on This Is Your Life. And we were backstage talking about this. Mayor, you were there as sheriff at such a time in the 60s in Memphis. A great tragedy happened, but you were a part of starting to write the end of a story that really the mystery still continues on in a way, but you were the one, there you are with James Earl Ray, and you told me about what you wanted to make sure happened when James Earl Ray was returned to Memphis.
Well, obviously, history suggests that the safety of anyone who commits a crime like that, you don't know what was behind it, who's anxious to see the person not go to trial, as they did in Dallas when President Kennedy was killed. And Oswald was killed right in the middle of the law enforcement, where people were standing around, newspaper people, in the basement of the jail. And this dude walks up, known to the people, pulls out a pistol, and kills the guy, and he never went to trial. So we never knew the truth. If there's one thing that's important to a democracy, the Constitution, freedom of people like this, we ought to have the right to have access to be adjudicated if we're charged with a crime. But if you're charged with a crime, we ought to know why the crime took place, like the assassination of Bobby Kennedy in Los Angeles, and the same thing with James Earl Ray and Martin Luther King in Memphis. So I didn't want James Earl Ray to be taken out before he had a chance to go to trial. Obviously, deals were made by the attorneys and his brothers and what have you. And so he escaped with just going to prison. When he saved his brothers, without a doubt, from going, others to be included. And I thought that was a bad deal for the American people, because justice did not prevail in that case.
I wanted to bring up these issues with your life in Fulton and with St. Jude and with James Earl Ray to make a point to everybody that your career was existing in Memphis in law enforcement on a track that Elvis would have been aware of who you were, obviously from knowing you through your wife, but you were forging a career in that city before you became mayor in law enforcement, and Elvis had an incredible love and respect for law enforcement.
Well, there's no question about it. As a matter of fact, I'm sure people are aware of this, but he contributed money all over the country. He set up a drug abuse program in Denver, Colorado, and he used to make a contribution all over to law enforcement. And beyond that, he respected law enforcement. So he says one day, "Look, I want to go meet the director of the FBI." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I want my guys to see this guy." I said, "Well, okay, let's see if I can work it out." So I make a call, and we were invited to come to bring Elvis and his guys to Washington to see James Earl. But while we were going there, I was a member of the board of directors of the National Sheriff's Association. And I said to Elvis, "How would you like to have all of these guys deputized with the National Sheriff's Association?" He said, "Man, that'd be great." So we walk into the office. Can you imagine this? Out of the blue, unannounced. An office of 25 or 30 ladies in there. And you would think lightning just struck. And it's that way everywhere I went with it. It's like lightning struck. We walked in, and sure enough, it took an hour to get things calmed down, but he had every one of his guys raise their hand, swear on the oath, obey the laws of the United States of America, da 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 da. I said, Elvis, do you know what you're doing? Don't make a liar out of these guys. So anyway, they all got signed up, and he bought a bond for them, and they were legally constituted law enforcement people by the United States Sheriff's Department. So he loved law enforcement. I'll tell you what he was concerned about. When Martin Luther King was killed in Memphis, Tennessee, he had never spoken once about law enforcement or disorder. But he was so concerned, he did not know what the reverberations were going to be as a result of Dr. King being killed. Well, neither did I, neither did anybody else. But we talked for hours and hours over a period of time about the responsibility of citizens. He did not want to get involved. He never spoke out. He never got involved in partisan politics. And he said, I make music. Thank God for that, because that had played a bigger role in bringing the world together than any of the policies and cultural events anybody else would ever taken. But he was concerned, and so make no mistake about it, he was a law and order guy. I will say this, because I want everybody to know my perception. He loved God. He loved America. He respected women, mothers, children. He respected the people who couldn't afford to do things for themselves, including buying classes for people who couldn't afford them, who bought assistance for people for whatever their needs were that we take for granted. Like the Lions Club, you're going out and buying classes for people. He was there on the front, and he kept up with it. So one of the greatest rewards I've ever had was getting to know and be a part of Elvis Presley's life. And I think the world is better because of it.
And this photo here is really the only kind of its photo that exists in the world. And tell everyone what's so interesting about this.
You know the bad thing about that photograph? A lady came up and he said, "Who is that with Elvis?" Looking at me. I said, "Ma'am, I'm not offended, but that's me." So we do change a little bit over a period of time. But we were at the George Clown's wedding in Las Vegas and clowning around, and Elvis, which we did it all a lot of time at home. I'm a great gospel guy. I love gospel music. As a matter of fact, he was saying that on that particular day, he sang and I mumbled to "How Great Thou Art." And when my wife died, that was her favorite song, my favorite song. And when she died, Elvis sang the best of the 6 renditions of his "How Great Thou Art." And I have to tell you, it's a wonderful song. But all over the world, people are using Elvis Presley songs at funerals.
Yeah.
Tell me if that doesn't mean something. He communicates through his music. He shows heart and compassion. He adds Jesus and God into his rhetoric. Great ministry, folks, when you do that. Thank God for Elvis Presley.
And Elvis didn't do a lot of duets with people, so there aren't a lot of photographs with Elvis singing with anyone. But this photograph, that's what you guys are doing. This is Elvis singing with what we would call a non-professional singer.
There is no other photograph that I know of, Google and otherwise, of him singing with somebody else. So that's important to me, that I think the people know he did take the time to do that. And I have that photograph available. Yours for only a few bucks.
And you talked about...
But it'd be rare, right?
And I'll tell you, when growing up in Tupelo and reading the commercial appeal of the Memphis Press Scimitar and seeing your name as sheriff and then became mayor of Shelby County and for a number of years, and I've been one of those many people that before the Bill Morris Parkway up there. But growing up in the 70s, I so wanted to be a member of that group right there. I was a teenager, and I would see that picture, and I'd be like, man, if I could only know one of those people in that picture. And I've gotten to meet a few of you, and that group grows smaller. But that's a special group of
Three
guys.
people left,
Yeah.
and the list gets shorter and shorter. But I tell you what, they made a statement
Yeah.
because it was glue that kept things coming together.
Yeah.
I was always proud to be a part of that.
Well, it's a very special time, and like I said, your book, you read it as an Elvis fan, but it's a book about America. It's about the Mid-South in a changing time in the 60s and 70s, and the things. It was fun to watch Mayor Morris meeting Mayor Jordan, and they were talking they were like mayor talking, like, well, how do you do that? Well, we passed that kind of bill. Oh, well, I need to talk to you about. You were asking him how you're able to. How can you tear down a building? What do you? And they have the blight. They have the group that goes through and looks at buildings. So there was all this mayor talk going on back there. It was amazing.
I tell you what, we did talk about it, though.
Yeah.
Elvis influenced a bunch of it. In Memphis, we were in bad straits after Martin Luther King was assassinated. People moving out of the city, jobs lost, people moving somewhere else, and it was as a matter of fact, I used to say, when I grew up in Milam County, we thought about when people die, you have a mourner's bench, right? You all know about mourner's bench? I said, Memphis had the longest mourner's bench in the world, because all we did was sit around and moan and groan about how bad things were, instead of getting off our butts and doing something about it. And that's what Todd and I were talking about. Same thing with Tupelo. You had a large area that needed to have something done. So he got people involved. Tupelo officials got some people involved. We got some people involved in Memphis. And there's been a major turnaround, but you can't let up. You can't ever let up. This is our town, Tupelo, Mississippi. This is our town, Memphis, Tennessee. And this is our country, the United States of America. We need to be a part of the solution to the problem, not part of the problem. And I have to tell you, I can't say enough every day about getting up every day and saying, what am I going to do to make my life better and the people around me? Amen. And people of Mississippi.
That's why I was a mayor for over 25 years. Mayor, thank you so much for coming down to Tupelo, and I guess I'll see you at the after party tonight.
I can't stand with one at my age. I can't stand with one. I appreciate it very much. Let me say to all of you guys, it's been a nice festival and my first chance to be here. But keep up what you're doing, but keep believing, keep sharing. Know full well that tomorrow's going to be better than today because you made a difference. And thank God we have a guy like Tom Brown. Thank you very much, Todd. Thank you all.
And Mayor Jordan is happy in that way. Mayor Jordan is so happy Bill's not going to move to Tupelo and run for mayor. Because I think I'd move to Shelby County and vote for him. I gotta tell you.